Okay, good to see you all, and I'm quite happy to be in the relative frigid temperatures of the mid-80s as opposed to 110 in Fresno, California. But I'm very happy to be here, and thank you, Dr. Kruger, for the invitation. So, I think we should probably get right into it, and I would like to introduce Jacq Becker and Sidibe, both emerging, and as we like to put it in the editorial pages of Pollstar, emerging artists that have been emerging for many years, and and they're probably the longest and hardest working unknown kind of artists that are actually very common in this business. Few people make it overnight. People work very hard, and these two girls are very good examples of that. So I think what I'd like to do is have them both introduce themselves to you first. And Jacq, if you would like to start that.
And with some background, or just?
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be fine.
So I'm Jacq Becker. I'm a singer-songwriter. I have been performing and writing and pursuing a career professionally for just about 10 years now. I started off studying jazz music and classical music, actually, and studied it all throughout school and college. And then when I came to LA, I really got into the jazz world and started performing at jazz clubs and bars. And probably, if you've been to any of the hotels in Beverly Hills, I've probably sung for you at some point. A little bit after, I started touring quite a bit, just independently setting up my own tours. A couple years later, I got signed by a producer, Red One, and got to further write all over the world and write with some of my favorite producers. Some of my influences are Sade and Nora Jones, and some newer artists, Liam Mahavas. So I've gotten lucky enough to work with some of those producers, and I'm currently working on my own. I'm completely independent now, and it's been quite a journey, but now I am working on a solo project, completely independent, and looking forward to riding that wave however it ends up in the next coming months.
I'm Sidibe, and kind of hard to summarize the creative journey, but music has always been my passion. I signed my first deal when I was 18, and it was quite an experience. My style, I'm not quite sure how to just give a description. Do they have one of this?
Pardon me?
I mean, I think the music kind of speaks for itself, but I'm an independent artist. I've gone through many deals, and doing this independently has been a great learning experience.
Okay. And with a lot of the changes with technology and just changes in the business in general, for instance, where much of artists' income is now thought to come from touring rather than recording. And I believe both of your experiences may be different than that, but maybe you can tell me what kind of marketing you do to find your audience and get your music to your fans.
Well, I mean, yes, it's changed dramatically in the past 10 years. I kind of have a little bit of a different route in that I started on the business side. That was my entrance into the music industry. I didn't know anyone in music, so I figured the best way to get my start was to start interning at labels. And so that's how I started connecting with people. So I really did get to see the transition and the flip to digital. And got to kind of see how those deals were worked out firsthand. So I had a little bit of an insider track to that, but independently, I mean, it's a really exciting time to be an independent artist, also an extremely overwhelming time to be an artist because there's so many different outlets and so many ways to get your music out there. And it is such a saturated market too. Anyone can just record a song. I could have recorded a song in the bathroom and just uploaded it. And you know, I don't have the numbers as some of the younger artists that are on YouTube all day long. So there's so much competition. So you really have to be smart about it, especially because as independent artists, we're putting time and money into creating our art. And if we just put it out there and there's no audience, then it's out there and then it's gone within a day.
Okay, sorry, I got really nervous trying to give a description of my creative journey and who I was. It's kind of a huge question. But how has technology affected our journey?
That and how you, and I would guess that it's different now than it used to be, where you had an agent or a manager that helped you,
Yes.
and a record label with tour support and all of that helped you to find your market and deliver your product to, I hate to call it product, your music, to your audience. And a lot of people are now doing it themselves, and whether it's with the use of data from YouTube or Spotify or Pandora stats, or how you get your music placed on those services. What works for you?
Well, I'm, an independent artist. I don't have PR, I don't have management. So my main source of PR has been social media, and of course the streaming sites, SoundCloud, Spotify, everything you can think of. I mean, the internet really is extremely powerful for reaching people.
Another tool that I've used as well is analytic tools like Simply Measured, which kind of help identify your audience in a better way than just putting content out there and just kind of shooting in the dark. It's a little bit more specific on how you should be releasing your music if you know where your demographic is and who you're trying to target and who's listening right now. I also have used SoundCloud and YouTube, probably not as effectively as I could, just because there's so many ways and so many kind of tricks to it, and I'm not a PR expert, so it can be overwhelming sometimes.
The social media is great, but there's also, you have to find a way to cut through so many people. And I think it just really comes down to the music, because that really speaks for itself.
Okay. Tell us how difficult it is to make a living as a professional singer.
Very difficult. I think my idea of making it was just to be able to support myself without a day job. And I was successful at that for quite some time, and I thought I was the queen of music for that period of time, even though I was making just enough to kind of get by as a songwriter. So yeah, it's very difficult, and people, right now I do have a day job too to help supplement my art, and people that can do it just by touring. I mean, I think that's amazing, independently, of course.
Well, making it as a singer off of my own material is definitely difficult. That's hard, but it's easy to find jobs if you're a vocalist. So I do a lot of background vocals, performing with other artists, and that money is really good, but it is not consistent. So sometimes you can make a bunch of money, and then you're kind of like having to be patient.
Okay, when you say you can make a bunch of money quickly, how much is a bunch?
Well, I guess that's all in the eye of the beholder, but maybe, I mean, how much is much? Giving away all my personal information, but I mean, I've made in about 5 days just for singing background vocals $4,000. That's pretty good to me. You make $1,000 in a session.
Also, if you get your songs synced in film and TV, you can make, just for one sync, you can make a lot, but one that I had recently was about 15 grand, but it was split among many collaborators. So if you are just writing by yourself, you're doing pretty after that, but it's really difficult to get syncs consistently, I would think.
And I think to clarify, both Jacq and I are also writers, and that makes a huge difference. I mean, just being a singer is not really enough unless you're Rihanna. You need to be writing, publishing.
Okay, and when we spoke on the phone last week, we kind of talked about publishing a bit, and I thought that might be another an interesting angle to come back and talk about here, about the pitfalls, and as well as the promise of having your own publishing as opposed to signing with a publishing company. Can you explain that?
Sure. I mean, I think with the right collaboration and the right publisher, it can really benefit an artist's career, but it really has to be the right fit. I was in a publishing deal for a while, and it wasn't the right fit for me, and I ended up kind of basically doing the work myself and putting myself together with different collaborators, and really getting things rolling for myself. So I figure, why not just do it on my own if I'm sharing the benefits from my work anyways. So I definitely think there's benefits, and I do have artists that are really happy in their publishing deals, and I would say most other artists that are not so happy in their publishing deals as well.
I think that if you're primarily a writer, a producer, a publishing deal is a good idea because that just gets you in the game. They'll put you on sessions. But if you're an artist, I'm not sure that a publishing deal is the best thing for you because it's basically a loan. So unless the money's amazing and you really want the money, but I feel like if you're an established artist, you don't need a publishing deal to get placements. People are kind of already coming to you for that. So, I mean, it's a catch-22. I think it really just depends on what your goal is.
Okay, and we also talked about the advantages and disadvantages of having an agent or a manager. Obviously, at the say Adele level, or even the continuing. I try to pick out we'll call them heritage artists without saying old timers, but generally the touring artists often have agents and managers that handle bookings and handling their business. But what I got from you two is that you didn't feel that those were necessarily required for you.
Well, right now I don't have management because I'm not into breakups, and I want to make sure that every relationship I enter into is not fear-based. And so I don't think you have to have one at this point.
Yeah, I really feel like managers and agents can be a huge asset once you kind of get some fire going for yourself. And then everyone will come to the table, but you really have to kind of spark everything and get the momentum going for yourself as an artist before you get the right match as a manager and lawyer. Not to say that there aren't really great managers out there and agents that would take on a truly emerging artist, but that takes a lot of time and effort, and you don't get paid for quite some time. So from my experience, I'd rather just go independent until I can really create momentum for myself, where I'll have a great choice of managers and agents out there.
Okay. And I think part of that equation also has to be how much generally does a manager and or an agent or an attorney or other people that you might hire to help move your career forward, how much do they charge you? Or how much do they get paid out of what you make?
I mean, you can get so creative with it. Generally, it's a percentage. In my experience with a manager, it was, I think, 15% or 10%. With a lawyer, it was 5%. I haven't worked with a booking agent before, so I don't know. But it gets very expensive working with lawyers when you're not on a percentage basis with them, and a lot of artists just simply can't do that. So it's really tricky.
Yeah, I mean, what she said, I think 20% for a manager is standard. Business manager, 5%, your lawyer, if you're going with percentage, 5%. So already there, you're giving away 30% of your income. So you want to make sure that the team is great if that's happening too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and and in addition, most people hire or have acquaintances, colleagues in music who will help them record as, band members or backup singers or, other parts of the artistic output that, so, maybe usually they would be paid, but not always. That, again, they start talking about taking another chunk out of the pie.
Oh yeah, yeah, it can go very quickly if you're not careful, and I kind of experienced that the first rounds, and now I'm completely on my own. I got the whole pie. Whole pie of nothing, but it will be something.
We make the pie larger. Okay, and I guess that kind of gets also into the question that we talked about, recording, and it's really good to know people who have recording spaces that will let you use them, and friends that will help you record. So how do you both generally go about recording on a small pie?
Well, I'm fortunate in that my collaborators have spaces that we can use. So I'll use their publishing and management space. And a lot of the musicians I work with don't even live here. So I end up sending them the tracks, and they play on them, and they send them back. So I'm actually able to record the music for free, which is not common, and I'm very grateful for that, because it can be very expensive. I know the studio that we record in is $1,000 an hour, so it's pretty expensive.
I'm pretty similar in that I'm lucky enough where a lot of my collaborators also have their own studios, ranging from top of the line to garage studios. I've seen it all. I would say also seeing a lot of younger artists get lured in by these deals that offer studio time is something that I've seen quite often, where it's so expensive to get into these studios. You get this producer that wants to either do a production deal or a deal, and they're offering you free studio time, and all of a sudden you're in a not so great deal, but you have free studio time. So it's always kind of a balance of, as a younger artist, I had every single minute planned out when I went into the studio because I was paying for it. And I don't really see that anymore because studios are, there's more of them.
Okay. And $1,000 an hour for studio time. This is kind of incredible to me. That's not
even really the most expensive.
Yeah.
But you can make music for free too. I mean, people are able to do it in all different types of ways.
Okay, because I think of at home several musicians that I know that are in bands and they're doing door deals against the bar. They're not making $1,000 an hour to perform, but yet they would have to spend that kind of money if they were doing the cash instead of whether it's trade, barter, or you got great friends. I don't see how people can do that.
Yeah, I think with the recording or the performing as an independent artist, you have to be careful about where you're investing your resources into, because for a while you are putting in money into something that you're not necessarily getting back immediately.
Okay, and that also makes me want to ask if there's investor possibilities for. I don't want to say GoFundMe. Right. I don't mean that, but I know of some artists who have actually put together investor groups in order to fund the recording of their albums and so on. So maybe you could tell us some of that.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely had conversations with outside investors that are interested in helping me fund a project or an album, but for me, kind of going through the experiences I've already been through with the different deals, it's important for me to be an owner of my masters. And if there's an outside investor, he's going to be an owner as well. And I'd just rather keep things clean at this point in my career. So, I definitely did a Kickstarter campaign when I was younger, and that funded my first EP. And it was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun too.
Well, I mean, that's something that I'm definitely open to exploring right now, relationship with a private investor. I think that those relationships can look, however you negotiate it. So but a lot of artists are doing that. I think that if you have your creative identity, at a certain point you just need a bank, and that's kind of what labels are today.
Okay, and we've talked some about the streaming services. How do you go about placing your music on streaming services, and maybe you could tell the group how well they pay?
Well, there's a ton of independent distribution companies that are out there. TuneCore is one of them. That's what I used for my first two projects. And then there's, when you're working with a label, they just kind of disseminate it to all the different streaming services that you need. So I've kind of done both. I have never received a check from a streaming service. Not to say that I won't in the future, but your numbers. There's so much music on Spotify and all these, Tidal, all of these services. There's so much to cut through. That really they're the new radio. So if you're not featured in the playlist, then it's really hard to compete with those numbers and get paid in a way that would actually you'd be able to live on. In my experience.
What was the question exactly? How we use
Streaming. Yeah. How do you get your music out there?
Well, yeah, just through, right now, my interest in streaming services is the exposure. It's not necessarily the money. Last year, I was lucky enough to have Prince share my music on Tidal. He had his own personal playlist, and that was amazing for me. I saw the correlation, obviously, with an increase in my plays. But yeah, I have to sign up for a program. It's called Sound Exchange, and I think that's how you get the money from streaming. But I haven't done that yet. So I need to do. I keep saying I will, but I'll let you know how that goes, and I do. But right now, my most, thing I'm looking for is exposure. So
yeah, I would say I'm not even concerned about numbers more than just getting my name out there.
Okay, and even though people like to characterize CDs and cassettes and physical product as kind of a dying industry, some artists do continue to make those. Do you have any experience with physical product like CDs and cassettes, mixtapes, that sort of thing?
Totally. Most of them are sitting in my parents' house. Yeah, I've definitely gone that route before. For my next project, I won't be printing any physical. Not to say there's not value in it, it's not where I want to put my time or resource right now.
I would love to do it because I'm a huge vinyl collector, so for me that would just be fun, but I haven't produced any physical copies yet, but I am releasing a project in Japan, and they will be making CDs and vinyl. And actually in Japan, CDs are still, they sell more than digital, so that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Okay. So I think one of the things that we talked about quite a bit on the phone was kind of the support system that you both have, whether it's friends and family that, whether they support your calling as an artist, even though I think we all know it's a difficult life to choose to do. Maybe you can tell us did your family support you and you wanted to be a professional?
They definitely did. They come from a more academic background than a musical background. So I think they thought it was really cool and different that I was pursuing this. And to date, still come to every show, and it makes a difference. Even though I'm a full grown woman now, they're still at every show. So yeah, they're there for me.
I think that any career path is difficult. I think that the most important thing is that you just love what you're doing. And yeah, it can be hard because you're trying to make a living off of your art. But my family is very supportive of me, so I'm lucky to have that.
Okay. And I guess another thing that we would all want to know is whether I just had a brain, you know what. I'm sorry. And this was something off the top of my head and not on my cheat sheet here, so. Whether, oh, I remember what it was now. We were talking about side jobs.
Oh, yeah.
Because in order to, to create and to do all the business side things that you have to do to market your music, distribute it, get people to hear it, live. Many people have what they call a proverbial day job. So maybe you could tell us some of the things that you guys have done to support yourself while trying to advance your art.
I've done it all. I was a beach camp counselor. My parents were very proud. I gave vocal lessons for a while to kids mainly. But primarily, I've always kept a day job on the business side of the music industry. And that's really helped me. And I know there's, a lot of different thoughts on being an artist, but also working on the business side. But for me, it's really helped balance. I do better with structure. So I've worked at labels for, the better part of almost 10 years now, and then worked for other independent composers, music tech companies, and I've kind of always also worked with talent. And some artists don't like that, but for me, it's just kind of helped me be a better artist since I know how to talk to artists because I am one. So that's how I've supported myself, and I still am working on the business side of the industry.
I mean, my side jobs have been still in music, doing vocals and singing with people. So I've tried to also limit that because I kind of want to keep what I do special, and I don't want to give away too much of my voice. So I make sure that I work with people that I love, and usually they continue to refer me to others. And yeah, that I just reserve that, so it's special when I do give that to somebody.
Okay, I believe someone in the audience has a question.
My name is Dave Bogan, and I'm the founder of a company called Tune Registry, and I'm called Royalty Claim. Our primary mission is helping DIY musicians with their rights and publishing, kind of self-publishing. So everything I've been talking about in that little piece about publishing is really interesting to me because that's kind of my research area. What do you feel as independent artists who have very limited resources and team is the most challenging part or most intimidating part of being your own publisher or your own label? And how do you think you could potentially do a better job in administering and protecting your rights? You mentioned that you've heard of sound exchange, but you haven't had time yet to sign up for that. Do you feel that this whole world of publishing of rights and royalties is crazy? Do you feel like there's resources for you? Like, where do you guys stand when it comes to ultimately financial well-being for that perspective?
So I actually read about your company. A friend of mine sent me a link about what you're starting, and I thought it was super interesting because I do think it's a big problem for artists in that publishing, especially working with PROs, is just like a huge black box of information where even, you ask an artist that you're going to co-write with, like, hey, what's your, IPI number? Like, how are we going to, we need to register this song, and they're like, what? Like, I don't have any of that, or like, I don't know how to do that. And even when you log on to ASCAP or BMI, it's pretty difficult to see how you're making money, where you're making money, who's owning what. So that's actually, a topic. The last startup I was at, I was trying to address that. Like, artists don't know how to do this. There needs to be a better solution for monitoring it and for basically dumbing it down a little bit so that all artists understand how it's working, because it's so important. If you're left off the cue sheet, you don't get any money even if you wrote a whole song. And most artists don't understand that. I don't know if I answered your question, but.
What was the exact question though? It was broad, like what do we think about publishing and getting.
What challenges do you face with the musicians in that space as being their own publisher?
getting your music out there to people where you can monetize off of it. Well, I mean, again, it's just cutting through the fat. There's just so many artists. But challenges that I face, I mean, doing this on my own has really helped me because I form relationships with everybody, people at the blogs, TuneCore. So, I mean, word of mouth is really important, and you can't take that for granted. But, yeah, I mean, I've withheld doing a publishing deal just because at this level, I'm not going to get that much money, and I do plan on getting money. So why would I sign up for it? Why would I sign up for it now? I think patience is important.
Who's got the mic? Okay.
My name is Lawrence from the Umbrella Group. One of you was talking about using tools to manage your demographic. I think that was
Jacq.
you said that?
Yeah.
So can you talk a little more about that? How you identify your demographic and how to use those tools to do that?
Well, for me, with social media, I get very overwhelmed by it. I don't really particularly like it. I like making music. So when I do it, I want to make sure that it's hitting the correct people, and I'm putting the right content out there. So the last company I worked with was actually working with a social media AI technology, and we were using all of these different services like Simply Measured, which basically you connect all of your different social media handles, and then it's basically able to monitor and distill all that information for you. So you get to know if it's more female leaning, where it's being played, if you're most of your demographic, and you can see all these analytics in a smaller version within all of these apps as well. The Simply Measured gives you like the overarching kind of demo of who you should be targeting, who's listening right now, what times they're listening, when you should be posting.
I'm not using anything like that. I'm not as, she's definitely had more of a business experience than me, but you can see on SoundCloud what countries are streaming your music the most. So, and oftentimes it's pretty surprising. And I think just like anybody, you can look on your social media and just see the people who are gravitating to your music and identify that. And it does give you some valuable information. It kind of helps you see yourself through the eyes of your fans and consumers.
Could I ask how you both sort of weigh singing on their own versus joining a band and working as part of a group? If you've done that as something in your career, I'm curious about the calculation you think about it in terms of the way that you're pursuing your
I've always been a solo artist. I've never had a passion to be with a band or a group. I think that sounds kind of stressful too. That's a lot of personalities and people to deal with. But I think maybe in the future it'd be fun to just have a side project. But yeah, I've always just had a clear sense of who I am musically, and I've been lucky to find people who can create that with me. So I do have collaborators that I've been working with for like 6 years, and to me that kind of is my group and my band. So I'm lucky that I have a team where we've created a sound for me together. So it's just never thought about being a band yet.
Yeah, kind of same for me. I did some backup vocals with bands before, and just always prefer being a solo artist. And then also what makes it a little bit more collaborative is usually members in my band are writing with me, so they feel like it's just as much theirs as it is mine. So that's always helpful.
I really enjoyed your thoughts, and so here's my question. You know, if all the music industry for the last few decades, some people see a lot of gloom and doom, and depending on who's sitting up at the front of the room, you'll hear talk about how from the end of the world, the first time to your life. What's your perspective on all this new technology? Is it a good time to be an aspiring or a musician on the make, or is it a bad time?
It's a good question. I mean, oftentimes I have people tell me like, oh, you should have been born in the 70s. And I'm like, oh, I don't know, maybe. I mean, I think every time is hard. I think that, again, just the fact that everybody can put their music out there, it's really difficult to be heard. But I think at the end, there is no graph that you can look at for music. It's all about the art. So my main focus is just to make art that comes from my heart and that I love, and try to get it heard as much as possible. But sometimes I do get disheartened because it's definitely about the branding. I think more than it is about the music today.
Yeah, I would agree that there's no great time to be an artist. It's always going to be difficult, and all you can do, no matter what kind of technology or who you know or your connections, it's really about, is your music, you know, worth listening to? Is it good enough that you just have to listen to it and let it speak for itself? Because you can get really wrapped up in all the latest technology and simply measured and stuff like that. But if your music isn't there, then none of it matters. And you know, for me, we were talking about this over the phone, like numbers don't really mean anything if they don't translate to people actually coming to your shows. It just means that you're really good at PR and marketing.
Yeah, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors. I think, like, when you really look at people's sales, it doesn't necessarily correlate to their popularity. So some of the biggest selling artists, you're like, really? But yeah, their demographic buys music, they go to see their shows. And I think both of us, I'm sure, want to be lifetime artists, and that takes time.
Yes, we have a gentleman over here.
Thank you for your presentation. Both of you seem to value the independence of your art. But it seems to me that if you see your streaming through Spotify or other outlets as mainly a way to not monetize but to get your name out there, the main outcome that I can see from that is somebody, a larger entity, coming there because your name is big and taking you under the wing, which takes away your independence. So do you think should be now be focusing on monetizing more your independent work through services like the gentleman behind me, they spoke before, or other similar services, or I don't know for any others those. So that's question number one. Question number two is you're both writers, and that's a thing you have about other artists, other singers, other performers. Have you explored, and how easy do you think it is to explore finding more artists more popular than you to give your music to, which will then increase your visibility? And this has happened to many artists.
So to answer your last question, I think that's where a really great publisher would come in handy. As an independent artist, that's not so easy unless you just have the relationships on your own, especially if you don't have any kind of call them cuts, like out there with other artists, then the bigger ones probably won't pay attention, and the publishers will certainly not pay attention, especially if you don't have another publisher speaking on your behalf. Do you want to talk on that?
I think, yeah, what she said is true. I mean, again, relationships. You know, the people that I've worked with have submitted my songs, and some of them have actually been released, but a major artist was going to record it, and I was totally okay with that because I know that I'm going to keep producing work, and I don't feel precious about it. So, I mean, that would be great, but I think a publisher is definitely helpful in that case because it's all they do. It's all they focus on.
And I'm sorry, your first question was, should we be focusing on monetizing?
Focusing on find ways to register your music, so no matter how small or big the cat is, that you have access to it instead of just letting it go to black hole or to some other project.
I'm working on that. Yes, I have to look up the gentleman's company in the back, and I really have in mind trying to sign up for a sound exchange recently. But yeah, again, the music that you get from streaming though isn't. It's definitely, everything helps, but it's not substantial. I think that in our case, we could dedicate more time to getting placements.
Yeah, I'm seeing more money from syncs and royalties there than I would on streaming for some time, unless all of a sudden my music takes off.
And shows.
Are your placements one-off fees, or are they some percentage?
Well, they're royalties because we're writers on them. And then also if you're a master owner, then you also get the master sync fee as well. But usually when I was with the label, I'd see none of it until I was recouped. So this is a new thing for me. I'm like, wow, I get a royalty? Like, this is new.
So as independent artists, putting out your own music, some artists will put it out for free just to get it out there and heard so that people come to the live shows and that's where they get their money. Other people say, no, I put hard work into this. I should, this is something that should be paid for. Where do you guys stand on that? And once your music is finished and you put it out there, how do you decide how much price of what people should pay for it?
I initially, when I started putting out music, because I had, in the beginning, I was signed when I was 18. I'm giving away my age. I've been doing this for nearly 10 years as well. But I only put music out for the first time when I was independent 3 years ago. So initially, I decided to put out my music for free. I mean, you can't be too precious about it. You just want people to listen to it. But as I've started to gain more of a following, I was like, you know what? Let people pay for it. And so I have my music up on Bandcamp. So that music the money goes directly to me. And on iTunes, I just pick the standard pricing to compete with, whatever everybody else is doing. But Bandcamp is nice. We haven't mentioned that. The money goes, of course they take a fee, but it goes directly to an artist, which is nice.
Okay. Can we take one more? Time for one more. One more and then everyone to the bar. You got it. You have a woman in the back. Get a female voice.
What is your guys' opinion on some of the recent developments with kind of more collective-based organizations like Fresh Selects? I don't know if you guys know them, where it started out as a blog and then they were a label and everything, but named corporate entity, and it was about curating different types of art and finding artists who were previously DIY, giving them a structure to distribute their music and market their music effectively. Do you guys see that the kind of traditional art collective model of other mediums maybe taking more of the lead in the next, however many years? Is that something you've thought about?
I'm not too familiar with that specific company, but my feelings generally towards it is anything that they could probably do for me, I could probably do on my own if I put in enough time and effort. So I tend to not definitely turn the other way if there's a fee for things that I know I have the intelligence to do.
Yeah, I agree with her. I mean, I don't have a manager because at this point I'm like, I can kind of, unless it's a crazy, a big manager, they're kind of an assistant in a lot of ways. And so really, I've been empowering myself just to do most of the things that a manager could do or a collective like that. I think I've kind of found my groove and I'm at a place where I don't want anybody disrupting the flow unless they're going to help enhance it. So I've really heard of that.
Okay, well, on that note, I want to thank you both for being here and thank Mira for inviting us all. And on that note, I guess we will meet you all at the bar.